Hey everyone, this is Steve. If your carvings aren't coming out like you hoped they would, or if your knife feels like it's hard to control, this video is for you. Today I'll show you how to choose a carving knife, how to use it safely, and how to make those basic cuts that every wood carver should know. Welcome to the second video in the series on how to make wood carving easier. My name is Steve Hunter. I've been carving wood since about 1998, so around 27 years off and on. But I've been doing this for a while and have figured a few things out. Not saying I'm the best wood carver in the world, but I think I can help you learn some of the fundamental things that can help your journey in learning wood carving maybe a little bit easier. So the main focus of this series is to help teach you about some of the different choices you can make along the way when you're learning to carve wood, and hopefully showing you that certain decisions and certain choices will make wood carving easier. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is choosing a carving knife. Now it's true that you can carve all you really need to get started is a piece of wood and a knife, a pocket knife or kind of a general purpose knife like this. But again, to make wood carving easier, to give you the most chance of success and the most enjoyment from carving, I highly recommend finding a good quality handmade carving knife that's designed for wood carving. And one of the things you look for is to make sure it's a fairly thin blade. It has a nice shape down to a good point, and it's really sharp. And also that it's made out of good quality steel so that it holds an edge. I sell Badger State Blades knives on my website, hunterscreations.com. So I'll put a link to that below, so you can check that out if you like. The main thing to know is that you make a good choice for a carving knife, even as a beginner, especially as a beginner. You want a good quality knife. It's going to give you the best chances here. Okay, now the next thing, we're going to talk about safe knife handling. We can't really talk about that without talking about safety gear. Now these carving knives, like I said, you want one that's extremely sharp. It needs to be extremely sharp. So when you're handling an extremely sharp knife, you want to have some protection. And you'll see different people on YouTube carving without a glove, a cut resistant glove. I've seen, I won't mention names, but I've seen a guy carving on YouTube that was talking about how he's got quite a few years of experience carving, and that's why he wasn't wearing a glove. And in the video, you can see him cut his finger. So it doesn't matter how long you've been carving, things happen, wood breaks, things slip, mistakes are made. Always, always wear a cut resistant glove on your non-dominant hand. I also have, these are claw cover gloves, and they're an ANSI A7 cut rating, which is in the highest, it's not the highest number, but it's in their highest category of cut resistance. And I find that they're a good quality glove. This has definitely saved me several times. And don't carve without a glove, especially, it's not worth it. You get a glove like this that fits your hands, you get used to it, it's fine. The other safety thing, and I do have a video on how to make these, is a thumb guard made out of some finger safety tape. There's I'll link that video also. It shows you how to make this so that it kind of forms to your thumb. And I always wear that. I wear a thumb guard and a cut resistant glove. safety first, right? It's safety, and it also kind of gives you some confidence too. So you don't have to worry about cutting yourself. You can just carve. Okay? So safe knife handling starts with safety gear. And then, just like any knife, um, you want to be careful how you're holding it, especially if you're around other people. You don't want to be waving it around. Um, and also, because it is such a refined edge on these knives, you don't want to be banging the edge around on, laying a bunch of tools on your desk or throwing them in a drawer or anything like that without some kind of protection on the blade, just to protect the integrity of your blade. Okay, so let's talk about some basic cuts. And we are going to make something in this video. We're not going to make a gnome, but we are going to make something. And this might seem like kind of a silly practice, but I think it's important. So first, what we're going to make, just a little spoiler alert, we're going to make a pile of shavings. That's all we're going to do. That's all we're worried about right now. So let's talk about some different cuts that every wood carver needs to know, and types of cuts, and also how to hold the piece you're working on and your knife, and how to make these cuts. That one of the cuts I like to use a lot is kind of a push cut. Some people call it a hinge cut. And what we're doing is you hold your knife in your dominant hand with the blade, like if you're holding it like it's a bicycle handlebar, and the cutting edge away from you. And then what you're going to do is this thumb in your holding hand, your non-dominant hand, becomes kind of a hinge point. So I'm going to start my cut with my end of the knife forward, and I'm just going to pull it back, pivoting it on that thumb. Okay? I want you to just practice that. Just that cut. Make a whole pile of shavings. And don't try to cut real deep. In fact, what I'd like to see you do is try to see how thin you can cut that. Just try to take off tiny little shavings. The reason for that is a lot of blades are kind of a convex grind. They aren't a flat grind from the spine down to the cutting edge. There's kind of a convex shape. And I find that works really well. Like if I'm holding this knife here, you'll see me kind of you may even tell by the reflection on the blade sometimes, I will roll that knife just a little tiny bit, and it's kind of rocking on that convex surface, and that gives you super close control on how deep you're cutting. Like if I just lay my knife on there and slide it back and forth, it's not going to cut anything. It's on the high spot of that convex grind. But as I tip my knife forward, you can see the light change on the blade. Tip it forward a little bit, well, then it just takes a whisper of wood off of there. That curling up, how thin that is. So that's something I think you should practice, and take the time to just do that. Don't, your first carving, you shouldn't be trying to make some figure that you've seen somebody else make. If you're just starting carving, just worry about learning how to use your knife. Don't worry about making something cool. Just make a pile of chips, and look at how thin those are. Nice curled up little shavings. Okay, now throughout all these cuts that I'm going to show you, there's one thing that isn't very well talked about. I guess I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, but to make one thing that makes wood carving easier. This is a big deal here, so I want you to practice that. Is you can, you get your knife angle correct, and you can just push that straight through, especially if you're just taking off shavings. See how I'm just pushing that knife forward? But the real secret is you need to learn to slice the wood off. Don't push it off of there. So when I'm starting this cut, I'm near the back of the blade here. And as I rock my hand or my knife around my thumb, actually that blade is traveling sideways as it goes forward. And that is the best way to make a smooth, easy cut. You got to slice the wood. You have that nice sharp cutting edge on the knife. Use it. Slice it. And just keep doing that. Just keep slicing that out. I'll go a little wider here, not just on the corner. Get that practice getting that control, that angle. And practice moving your knife sideways as you cut. Now here's another version of that. I'm pushing the knife forward as it goes away from me. See those thin shavings? Make a whole pile of them. That's your goal today. Make a pile of shavings, okay? So that's the hinge cut or the push cut. And when you incorporate that slicing with it, it's so easy to remove the wood. Nice sharp knife. So this is what we're talking about in this series. How to make it easier. Easier is learning these little tricks. Okay? Now, we still got wood here. We can still make some more shavings. So let's learn a different cut. Let's talk about the paring cut or a pull cut. I mean, there's people that have different names for them. So I use this quite often. And this is a good example of why I always have a thumb guard. You'll hear other people talking about a good knife handling practice is to make sure, like if you're doing this type of cut, that you have your thumb down below the path of the knife blade, so that if it slips like this and your hand closes, the knife blade goes over the top of your thumb. Not a bad practice at all, but there are times, and I feel that I can control it better if I'm actually more in line with my thumb. That's why I build and use these thumb guards. They're very inexpensive and they last a long time. And they work really, really well. So this is the paring cut or a pull cut. Same concept as before as far as angle of the knife blade for depth of cut, and slicing to make it easier. Easier and a smoother cut. You'll get a nice smooth cut when you do that. So if you pull it towards you and pull it sideways, you can make those nice clean shavings. Now there I had my thumb below, which is fine. You can also do that up here. And the knife blade is going to kind of snap into that thumb guard. And I've never cut through one of these things. Eventually it'll kind of wear out and you can add more to it and eventually replace it. But super, super good thing to have on your thumb or other fingers if you want. So there's a second kind of cut, the paring cut or pull cut. And again, the more use of that blade length, the easier and smoother your cuts will be. The other thing I've talked about in my other videos, when I'm making videos, it's hard to do all of the steps and work of a carving in a time frame that is suitable for watching it on a video. So a lot of times I am being very aggressive, pulling big chips off, cutting really deep, and if you're just beginning, I don't recommend doing that at all. Just take your time, make thin cuts. It gives you the opportunity too to kind of see what you're doing or what you have done. If you're trying to take off great big chips and you're struggling and pushing and you get that big chip cut off of there and then you look at it and you're like, uh-oh, I shouldn't have done that. Now, if you're taking these little cuts, just taking little, here I'm kind of using that push cut, but I'm doing a little bit different variation of it. I'm making a round surface. So as I push and slice, I'm also turning the knife handle, kind of driving it around that curve. That's another skill that's good to have. Helps you in shaping round objects, and there are plenty of round objects to shape when you're carving figures. Okay? So those are just kind of some basic cuts. A push cut, got a pull cut, or paring cut. Again, just shaving. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is there are times when we want to really, remove some material. We've just been kind of going along a corner or an edge. But there's going to be times where you want to take a chunk out of the side of the piece. Let's talk about a V cut or a stop cut. So a V cut, we're going to take our knife blade and approach the piece of wood at an angle like this and use our thumb, our holding thumb here, and put pressure on the back of the blade and just rock the blade a little bit. And then we're going to roll our knife forward to the opposite angle, and you can push that way. You can also put your thumb on there to pull it down. You just kind of go back and forth and make a nice clean cut. So there's a stop or a V cut. We use that a lot of times for underneath the nose or creating a brow ridge on a face. There's a similar cut, but we're going to call it a stop cut. We're just going to go straight in the wood, not at an angle like we did here. We're just going to go straight into the wood. Again, just kind of put pressure on the back of the blade with your other thumb here and push it down in there a ways, and then lay your knife flat and it come up to it. And you can hear that slicing through the wood, and then it kind of clicks against that stop cut. And that's the purpose of that. It stops where you're cutting to make a nice edge. Okay, and that'll give you more of a straight in and slanted down. So we have a stop cut and a V cut. And then another form of stop cut that's common in carving is it is still a stop cut. Let's say we want to carve around something, or we want to carve a detail in. I don't know, let's just say we're going to carve a pocket on the side of this piece of wood. So this kind of a stop cut is you'll use the tip of the knife. You'll stand the knife up, use your thumb to brace on here, not because you're going to be using a lot of force, but because you want steady control. You don't want your knife and the piece of wood kind of independently moving around. Kind of anchor things together, and use the tip of your knife and just kind of trace over this line you drew with your pencil. Just don't go in there super deep. So these are just stop cuts. It's like a shallow version of what we did here. Up here we used the whole blade, rocked it in there pretty hard. Here we're just using the tip of the blade, and we're not going in very deep at all. Kind of missed there. Okay. And then we can do what's called a relief cut, which is, I should have explained that up here. The stop cut is coming in like this, creating that stopping point, and then the relief cut is when you cut up to it to relieve that piece of wood up to that stop point. So on here we did our little relief or our stop cuts, and now we're just going to do the relief cuts up to there. You can use the tip of the knife and just stay just back from your stop cut like that, or you can use the side and just kind of slice it in there. Again, the slicing motion. See, I didn't just push it in there, I kind of slid it in. Same over here. Clean that up a little bit. Okay, then we made a little pocket on there. So those are if you get those cuts practiced really well, you'll be in a good spot to try to do some other things. But like I said, take the time. That's the whole point of this series. Is I don't want to just go over these cuts real quick and then jump into making a figure or something. I want you to get a piece of wood and a knife and make shavings. That's what you need to make. Just practice those cuts over and over again. You get a feel for the knife. You get used to your glove that you have on. You get used to holding and moving the piece of wood around as you do this. Practice making real thin shavings. Practice pushing that knife around the corner, making that corner round. Do some pull cuts. Think about the slicing motion. That will make such a difference in your carving. Learn to slice. Okay? So let's just recap quick. What do we need to work on? We need to work on choosing a good knife. We need to work on getting the proper safety gear. We need to kind of get used to holding the knife and handling the knife, being careful of our surroundings. We need to practice the different types of cuts that we just went over. And you need to not try to make anything specific, just make a pile of shavings. Get a piece of wood and just turn it into shavings. Get used to your knife, get used to the way it works. And I guarantee you that will make wood carving easier. Okay, well, if you enjoyed this in-depth, slowed down look at what I feel you should do and you get used to and learn how to do as a new carver, stick around for the rest of the series. I'm going to slowly just cover the basics, cover the fundamentals, try to explain it as clearly as I can and demonstrate it as clearly as I can, and hopefully this will help you out. So go practice carving and then come back and click on the next video and we'll talk about types of wood. We'll talk about where to get the wood, what's the best type of wood to use. We will have a little discussion and a little demonstration about wood grain, and we'll do some more practicing. Okay? Go carve.